Ernesto Guevara was born on June 14, 1928, in Rosario, Argentina. He was the oldest of 5 children in a family that had progressive and leftist ideas. His family was middle class and had both Spanish and Irish roots. From a young age, Ernesto suffered from severe asthma, a condition that would affect him for his entire life. Despite his health problems, he was determined to live an active life. He excelled as an athlete, playing sports like rugby, and was also a dedicated student with a deep love for reading poetry and philosophy. His early life was a mix of intellectual curiosity and physical determination, setting the stage for the extraordinary path he would later follow. A major turning point in Guevara's life came in 1951. He decided to take a break from his medical studies to travel across South America with his friend Alberto Granado. They started their journey on a motorcycle they called La Poderosa, which means the Mighty One. This 9-month trip showed Guevara the true reality of the continent. He saw extreme poverty, widespread hunger, and the difficult lives of miners and farm workers. He witnessed firsthand the great inequality between the very rich and the desperately poor. These experiences deeply affected him, planting the seeds of his revolutionary ideas and making him question the fairness of the existing social and economic systems. The journey did more than just open his eyes to injustice. It transformed his entire worldview. As he traveled through countries like Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Venezuela, Guevara began to see Latin America not as a collection of separate nations, but as one large entity that needed liberation. He believed that the poverty and suffering he saw everywhere were connected. This trip, later documented in his famous book, The Motorcycle Diaries, convinced him that medicine alone could not cure the continent's deep-rooted problems. He started to think that only a large-scale, violent revolution could bring about the necessary changes and create a more just society for everyone. After completing his medical degree in 1953, Guevara's political beliefs became even stronger. He traveled to Guatemala, where a democratically elected president named Jacobo Arbenz was trying to implement progressive land reforms. However, in 1954, Arbenz's government was overthrown in a coup that was secretly supported by the United States Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA. Witnessing this event firsthand was a crucial moment for Guevara. It solidified his belief that the United States would always oppose any government that tried to help its people at the expense of powerful corporations. This experience cemented his commitment to Marxism and armed struggle as the only way to fight against imperialism. Guevara's path toward revolution led him to Mexico City. It was there, in 1955, that he met Fidel and Raúl Castro, brothers who were exiled from Cuba. They were planning to overthrow the Cuban dictator, Fulgencio Batista. Guevara was immediately drawn to their cause and their determination. He quickly joined their group known as the 26th of July movement. He was no longer just a doctor with revolutionary ideas, he was now an active participant in a real revolutionary plan. He trained with the other fighters, preparing for the difficult mission ahead. This meeting in Mexico was the beginning of a historic partnership that would change the course of modern history and make Guevara a central figure in the Cuban Revolution. In December 1956, Guevara and 81 other revolutionaries sailed from Mexico to Cuba aboard a small yacht named Granma. The landing was a disaster. Batista's army was waiting for them and most of the fighters were killed in the initial attacks. Only a small group of about 20 men, including a wounded Guevara, managed to escape into the dense Sierra Maestra Mountains. In these mountains they began to regroup and build a guerrilla army. Initially, Guevara served as the group's doctor, but his bravery, intelligence, and strong leadership qualities soon became clear. Fidel Castro came to trust him completely, and Guevara was promoted to the rank of comandante, or commander, becoming one of Castro's most important and respected leaders. After 2 years of difficult guerrilla warfare, the rebels finally defeated Batista's army. On January 8, 1959, Fidel Castro's forces entered Havana in triumph, and the revolution was victorious. Guevara played a key role in this victory, especially in the decisive Battle of Santa Clara. After the revolution, he was given Cuban citizenship and several important positions in the new government. He was put in charge of La Habana fortress, where he oversaw the trials and executions of people accused of being war criminals and traitors to the new regime. This role remains one of the most controversial parts of his life, showing his firm and often ruthless commitment to securing the revolution. In the new Cuban government, Guevara held many powerful roles that shaped the country's future. He served as the head of the National Bank of Cuba, where he famously signed the currency with his nickname, Che. Later, he became the Minister of Industry, trying to move Cuba away from its dependence on sugar and toward a more industrialized economy. He was a strong voice for socialism and a fierce critic of United States foreign policy, which he saw as imperialistic. He traveled the world as a diplomat for Cuba, speaking at the United Nations and promoting his vision of a new socialist citizen who would be motivated by moral values rather than personal wealth. As time went on, Guevara grew increasingly unhappy with the direction Cuba was taking. He was particularly disappointed with the country's growing economic reliance on the Soviet Union. He felt that the Soviets were not true revolutionaries and were too focused on their own interests. This feeling intensified during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when the Soviet Union decided to withdraw its missiles from Cuba without consulting the Cuban leadership. Guevara saw this as a betrayal. He began to look for other revolutionary models, becoming more interested in the ideas of China's leader, Mao Zedong. He believed that the revolution should not be limited to Cuba, but must be spread across the world. Driven by his belief in international revolution, Guevara decided to leave his powerful position in Cuba. In 1965, he disappeared from public life. He wrote a farewell letter to Fidel Castro, giving up his Cuban citizenship and all his government posts to dedicate himself to revolutionary struggles in other parts of the world. His first attempt to export revolution took him to Africa. He secretly traveled to the Congo to support a Marxist rebellion against the government. He led a group of about 100 Cuban fighters to train and fight alongside the local rebels. This mission was a complete failure, and Guevara was deeply disappointed by the experience. The Congo mission failed for many reasons. The local rebels were poorly organized, lacked discipline, and were not as committed to the cause as Guevara had hoped. There were also internal conflicts, and a lack of support from the local population. After several months of frustration and failure, Guevara and his Cuban fighters were forced to withdraw from the Congo. He described the experience as one of the most painful of his life. Despite this major setback, his revolutionary spirit was not broken. He returned to Cuba secretly, determined to learn from his mistakes and prepare for his next mission, to start a new revolution in the heart of South America. After months of preparation, Guevara chose Bolivia as the next stage for his revolutionary war. In late 1966, he traveled to Bolivia in disguise to lead a small guerrilla force. He believed that Bolivia, with its poverty and political instability, was the perfect place to create a foco, or a focal point, for a continent-wide revolution. However, his plan faced immense challenges from the very beginning. His small group of fighters failed to gain the support of the local peasants, who were suspicious of the foreign fighters. He also did not receive the expected support from the Bolivian Communist Party, which left his group isolated and vulnerable in the hostile jungle terrain. The situation for Guevara and his small band of guerrillas in Bolivia grew more desperate each day. They were constantly on the move, hunted by the Bolivian army. The United States, determined to prevent another Cuba, provided the Bolivian military with training, intelligence, and resources. CIA operatives were also on the ground, assisting in the hunt for the famous revolutionary. Guevara's group was weakened by hunger, illness, and a lack of supplies. They were completely cut off from the outside world. On October 8, 1967, after a fierce battle in the Uro ravine, the Bolivian army captured a wounded and exhausted Guevara, along with his remaining fighters. After his capture, Guevara was taken to a small rundown schoolhouse in the nearby village of La Higuera. He was held there overnight and interrogated. The Bolivian president, René Barrientos, gave the order for his execution. The next day, on October 9, 1967, a Bolivian soldier was chosen to carry out the order. According to witnesses, Guevara faced his death with courage. He reportedly told his executioner, "Shoot, coward, you are only going to kill a man." After his death, his body was displayed to the press to prove he was gone. His hands were cut off for identification, and his body was secretly buried in an unmarked grave to prevent it from becoming a shrine. For 30 years, the location of Guevara's body remained a secret. But in 1997, a team of forensic experts discovered his remains in a mass grave near an airstrip in Bolivia. His bones were exhumed and sent back to Cuba. There, he was given a hero's burial with full military honors. His remains were placed in a large mausoleum in the city of Santa Clara, the site of his most famous military victory during the Cuban Revolution. The return of his body to Cuba was a major national event, allowing the country to finally honor the man who had become one of its most important and iconic figures. Today, more than half a century after his death, Che Guevara remains one of the most recognizable figures in the world. His image, particularly the famous photograph taken by Alberto Corda, has become a powerful symbol of rebellion, anti-imperialism, and the fight for social justice. It appears on t-shirts, posters, and murals everywhere. For some, he is a heroic revolutionary who fought for the poor and oppressed. For others, he is a ruthless figure responsible for violence and executions. Regardless of these different views, his life and legacy continue to inspire and provoke debate, ensuring that Che Guevara remains an enduring and complex icon of modern history.